finally, let's talk to somebody who's been an operational police officer, Mike Barton, the former Chief Constable of Durham Police. Mike, you heard Sian Berry, the Green MP, pointing out that Sir Mike Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, had acknowledged effectively that it was the community and the police together who had perhaps helped keep the peace last night. What's your view on that?
Well, that's how it always works, Ed. At any time when police officers are on duty, there's one police officer for about 3,500 members of the public. So if the public don't cooperate with the police officer, then you only need 2 or 3 of those 3,500 for the police to be engulfed. So it always works out like this. We obviously have to. I've lived through in policing many of these spates of rioting and violence, and it always takes a few days of confusion and terrible violence before the community and the police can bring peace to neighbourhoods.
I've got to say, Mike, you've got a tremendous reputation as having been a very effective Chief Constable of Durham. My impression is the police have dealt with all this extremely effectively, given how difficult it must have been to sort of kind of gear up for it. Are there any lessons, though, that can be learned from the last few days that some of your colleagues, people you used to work with, will be reflecting on?
I'm a bit of a has-been now, so I'm going to be careful I don't sound too clever.
Don't worry, this show is hosted by a has-been. All has-beens are welcome here.
Yeah, well, I admired you from afar as well. I think social media has got to be spoken about more openly. I think the government have got to do something about the way that the social media companies seem to act with impunity. They wash their hands of what's on their sites, but accumulate billions of pounds of revenue. So I think that needs to be tackled. And I think I always said, and I said so in the media when I was a chief constable, that social media sites are publishers. Of course they are. They are the mechanism by which people give their message to the public. And sadly, it's hate-filled. And the online safety bill that's going to be act that's coming into enactment shortly is really designed to deal with the other component of the social media sites, which is the extreme pornography and the danger to children. But what hasn't been talked about enough is the danger of this extremist language that promotes terror.
You mentioned that one of the biggest demonstrations or counter-protests, as it were, was probably in Brighton. And I'm delighted to say we can go to the local MP for Brighton Pavilion, who is Sian Berry, the Green MP. Welcome to the show, Sian.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So apparently something like 2,000 people turned out in Brighton last night. Perhaps it was more.
It was an awful lot. The street was absolutely packed, and a really tiny number of far-right fascist demonstrators and people intent on violence turned up because the power of the people was a clear deterrent. I think it's really heartening that people did that. Their message was incredibly clear, that they were there to defend and come together in solidarity and defend the primarily Muslim targets of these very Islamophobic current wave of protests and demonstrations and violence. And they were absolutely fantastic. There were some great messages, and people were in very, very good spirits. And I just think it really shows there was a lot of tension during the day and lots of worry that there would be violence on our streets. There was concern that there would not be enough police to deal with it. But in the end, it is down to the people to maintain public order as well. And I think we've seen Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of Police, saying that it was down to a combination of the police being ready, but also the massive show of unity from people that prevented big disorder again happening yesterday. And this is how it should be. The people are the police and the police are the public. All of those principles that we know make for good order in society, I think, were really on display last night.
I mean, one of the ways we also keep order is obviously by imposing prison sentences on people who riot. We were talking earlier about Derek Drummond, who's got 3 years in prison, but you must feel conflicted might not be the right word, but you will note, as a lot of people have noted, that Roger Hallam got 5 years for conspiracy to cause a public nuisance as part of the Just Stop Oil non-violent protest. I mean, do you have a view? Do you think there's a disparity in the sentencing here?
I mean, it's not really for politicians to weigh in on individual sentences. There is a separation between politics and the judiciary, but I think certainly the length of the prison sentences imposed on what would have been completely peaceful protests, disruptive but nevertheless peaceful, not violent protests, in comparison with how some of the sentences and some of the ways that people are being dealt with for much more serious offences, and have been not just recently but historically, it does need looking at. The previous government not only used toxic rhetoric to allow this form of racism, Islamophobia and fascism to grow in the country. There were a lot of dog whistles from the previous government that really did seem to give some permission for people to think in ways that are corrosive to society. But I think they also decided they were going to crack down on things that are part of a good society, i.e. peaceful protest and people able to speak up and come together and raise issues with the people who represent them. Cracking down with force on peaceful protesters who are not trying to demonize other members of the community, but are instead trying to make an important point, is something they did crack down on when they should have been paying much more attention to the growing racism, Islamophobia, and violent groups intent on causing harm to individuals and breaking up society. They should have paid much more attention to that. And I hope the new government will speak up really strongly about that, call all this out for being Islamophobic, stand by our Muslim brothers and sisters, and really invest again in building cohesive communities.
Brilliant. Sian Berry, that's Sian Berry, the Green MP for Brighton Pavilion. Thank you for coming on the show, talking about the peaceful counter-demonstration in Brighton last night, but also about the potential disparity between the sentences received by Just Stop Oil protesters and the rioters.